It's Fully Threaded Radio Special Report.
Hi everyone, Eric Dudas with you. Fully Threaded Radio Special Report. This time we're going to cover more on tariffs. Plenty of tariff news going around. We're waiting expectantly for the U.S. Supreme Court to make a big ruling. Matter of fact, we were expecting that ruling to happen just after we recorded this conversation, which is between Jason Baines of Lanfranco and Hans Fuller with Fuller Metric. Both of these gentlemen manage Canadian fastener operations, as many of you know. And late in 2025, news broke that the Canadian government was imposing a 25% across-the-board tariff on steel products and derivatives. You'll hear more details during the discussion. That's the summary. So as we wait for this big news in the U.S., things are going on north of the border too, and lots of business gets transacted that affects both sides, so anybody in the fastener game should be interested in this conversation. We've got a full episode of the podcast coming up pretty shortly. Hopefully we'll be able to pack in reaction when the Supreme Court makes its announcement. As it turns out, it was delayed. We were expecting it on January 9th, and they didn't pull the trigger on it. Not sure why. We'll find out. The title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio are Brighton Best International, Global Fasteners, and Star Stainless. Fully Threaded Radio is also sponsored by Buckeye Fasteners, BTM Manufacturing, Eurolink Fastener Supply Service, Cresa, Indries International, InSequel Software, Fastener Technology International, Lanfranco, MW Components, Solution Industries, Volt Industrial Plastics, and Worth Industry USA. We received lots of commentary about the tariff situation on the latest Fastener Distributor Index, which is on another surge. We'll have details on the next episode, but if you want to add your comments, they are very welcome. The email address, ftr@fullythreaded.com. We pick up a lot of info about the market, and we appreciate that. All right, once again, this is a conversation with Jason Baines and Hans Fuller. It's a very fast discussion, but we touch on the high points. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for clicking in. All right, as promised, I've got Jason Baines with Lanfranco and Hans Fuller, Fuller Metric. Both of these gentlemen, of course, well-known Canadian fastener people, good friends of the podcast for a long time. I was chatting with Jason about general topics yesterday. Of course, it went to tariffs. The FDI and so forth is really being driven right now by that, and as well as everything else. And Jason said, we should get Hans in here. And I'll remind everybody, we're recording this the day before we're expecting a major announcement from the U.S. Supreme Court on tariffs. But the Canadian perspective on what's going on up there with their targeted metal derivatives, as I understand it, these guys will fill us in a little bit more. It's a perspective that needs to be heard as well. Jason, why don't you launch it off? This conversation was your idea. Good to have you here.
All right, thanks. I'm going to call this a group therapy with Hans there, and hopefully Hans, his hourly rate for therapy is cheaper than the other therapists I've experienced. But yeah, up in Canada, we've got tariffs as well on steel. We do have a steel industry in Canada, of course. It's been targeted under the U.S. tariffs, and in the summer, the government put in a tariff rate quota limiting the quota of raw steel or some semi-worked steel products coming into Canada. And then if countries exceeded that, they'd face a tariff. What's changed most recently now is we have a steel derivative tariff, and this one, and Hans will I'm sure confirm, he was as surprised as me. On November 26th, there was a very small announcement by the government put out by the Prime Minister's office saying, we want to protect Canadian steel industry, and we're going to put a steel derivative tariff in. It's going to take effect December 26th in 4 weeks. But we don't have a list of what it is. We'll get back to you and tell you what it'll be. And we waited. And then on December 12th, they said, here's the list. And they listed everything under the sun. and said in 2 weeks, this will take effect. And it's 25%, regardless of country of origin, on the finished value of the product, regardless of whether we have a trade agreement with that country. So everything coming into the country now is a 25% tariff across the board. And I think that sums it up, Hans, as kind of, how it went down.
Yep. There was just one little line item. There was a little buzz. People were talking, apparently, I don't know if anyone that was consulted. I do know that apparently Pacific Bolt out here in West Coast, who is a manufacturer, was consulted. And they actually, from what I hear through the grapevine, they said, actually, we don't want this to happen. So, I don't know who was driving this. And I mean, to me, it makes no sense because really Canada virtually makes nothing that's, is on the list. So maybe it's just a pure tax play. Maybe it's something that the upcoming trade negotiations with the U.S. that we're going into, that maybe there's hey, this is how we're protecting the industry or something. But again, it's a mystery what those, who thinks what and who does what up there.
Yeah, there's a real lack of consultation.
So for further background on both of the speakers here, Hans, you're purely a distributor. Jason, you're more involved in manufacturing. You also do some distribution, but both of you are heavily involved in U.S. trade, of course, do a lot of business down here. What do you think is I realize this is a Lulu of a question, but what do you think is going to be the short term and then possibly the longer term impact if this system stays in place?
On our end, what I can speak to, the short term is, a few years ago, we opened up a U.S. subsidiary. And we've got a warehouse in New Jersey. What we're doing right now is with our factory. So our main factory is in France, and we've just called them up. And anything that was coming in, we've always used our Canadian operation as the main hub. That's our main operation. It's very simple. It's going to be routed straight into the U.S. because we're not going to pay a tariff twice. And I think this is where the government, number one, was short-sighted, looking at the short-term impact. If we had been given maybe a 6-month run-up or something, you can plan, you can make contingencies. A 2-week implementation is impossible. So in the short run, what it's going to do is on our end, reduce the volume of product coming into Canada. The government's not going to get to tax or touch this at all. It'll go into the U.S. to our U.S. customers. And then we wait and see. And us as a manufacturer, to be perfectly frank, we would look at potentially manufacturing in Canada if there was enough to justify a manufacturing footprint. There's simply not right now. But even if we looked at it and we could make the business case for it, and we could be open to that, a 2-week implementation is completely unrealistic. And then in addition, there's no subsidies for, let's say, tool creation and whatnot. And really, 2 weeks it's a joke. This is not a 2-week or 2-month or 2-year endeavor. So for us, we're going to just pivot. It'll go straight into the U.S. And that's unfortunate because it will hurt Canadians. And I think Hans, I saw some great comments by Hans on LinkedIn about this. And Hans was spot on with the number of jobs and the effect it has on Canadian workers and ultimately Canadian manufacturers.
Yeah, from Jason, I saw it maybe a little bit later than you did. What was happening, and we were also involved in trying to get it a little bit of push on the political side, which doesn't seem to be helping too much. When we look at the big picture, the industry, the manufacturing side in Canada employs maybe 1,000, maybe a little less than 1,000 people, East Coast only, that are making fasteners, and just a very specific, OEM stuff and not general use and structurals. And the amount of money and the amount of cost that's being downloaded onto our businesses now is I think in the number of $500 million. That's actually going to be more now because they've included so many things. When before it was just fasteners, now it's all these other things. So you have this industry that is quite small, and it's not really 25%. Is that really going to make a difference? When you're talking about something being made in Vietnam or being made in China, being made here, it's in the big picture, it's not really enough to make a difference. So supply chain is going to stay the same. and every business in Canada is going to pay more money. And just like you said, Jason, all of a sudden Canada is no longer the place that you could stage things. If you want to move something in and move it out again, now you can't. You're not going to do that. So we're going to lose all that. And as a really quick example, we know we have one of our customers, they have a manufacturing facility in the US, one in Canada, one in Shanghai. So all of a sudden they make machines in Canada. Everything they do is steel. There's a lot of steel in these things. So what's going to happen? The stuff to the US, sales has already moved to the US. Canada is not their biggest market. So where are these machines going to be made? Well, they're just going to move the manufacturing to China. So this whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's a short-sighted thing that's just going to cause Canadian companies, causes all more money in all these different segments. And it's, I don't know, it's a head scratcher.
Is there going to be any more administrative overhead that's being added because of the derivatives figuring? I know this has caused a lot of U.S. guys a lot of headache. I mean, is that an increase for you with these new regulations that have been announced as of December 26th that went into effect? I don't know if we said that.
Yeah, on our end, it's always adding a layer of administration, uncertainty. Right now, what I can tell you is they said they're going to enforce this for anything that's shipped after, December 26th. So if you were on the water, you have to imagine you have stuff on the water pre-December 26th. So we had stuff on the water, and they tried to send us a bill, in fact, yesterday. And I said, hey, this shipped weeks ago, and we're already dedicating resources to argue with customs on how to properly apply these tariffs. So for sure, it will add administrative costs to it. And it's a huge head scratcher because, like Hans was saying, there's not that many manufacturers. We're not talking a lot of jobs, but when you start talking hardware companies, distributors in Canada, that's over 1,000 companies. They're employing thousands and thousands of Canadians. That's a huge impact, right? And we need to be easy to deal with. So administration will just, that's what we're hiring for right now, actually, is someone to do paperwork.
Let's talk about pricing, because obviously all of this gets reflected in pricing, and that's always where customers push back. But on the other hand, it seems from the numbers that we're seeing that really they seem to be getting inured to this. They're accustomed to the prices, or they're figuring it already in. Is that what you're seeing, or what do you expect?
Well, from my side, from the we're not the guys leading the charge on the pricing. We're just kind of guys who have to follow with a small fish in the sea, but it sounds like people are just going to they're putting it in, and the letters have gone out telling people, hey, we're going to do a small increase now and expect more later. So it is what it is. I think the business climate has changed. It's become more competitive. We've seen prices come down in the last while. So I think we're not somewhere where we can absorb a whole bunch of this. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think the last year, everyone made a big effort to help customers, work with customers, key accounts, to control pricing, to limit the impact of tariffs within the U.S. There's also other factors you deal with all the time, right? So you look at, where are you buying? What currency are you buying in? That's been more volatile compared to other periods of time. And at this point, that just like Hans said, we're at a point where it's been very, very competitive. We don't have any real room. So it's going to be, we did the same thing, immediately contacted customers and said, this is how it'll be passed on to you. Whatever we've got here, you can secure it. Anything else coming in after, we're going to have a price increase. And then later on, probably another one. And people are frustrated, but at the same time, we're getting to a point where inventory is exhausted. Everybody front-loaded inventory. We've kind of worked through it. And I think they're starting to accept the reality that they're going to pay more. And that's what Hans said. Ultimately, the end user will carry this cost. And if, I don't know there's nobody to make these parts. Kind of like what Hans said, I don't know who they consulted. We can probably guess. I mean, if they wanted to say, we want to get, one type of structural bolt in Canada, maybe we could make those, but there's so many products that we just don't make. We don't have the capacity. There's nowhere for the cost to go, but the end user.
Yeah, I don't like if you look at it, I don't know if a spring pin manufacturer in Canada. I don't know a dowel pin manufacturer in Canada. Yes, there's some washer stamping guys, but not for like, the high volume stuff. So all these things, rivet, do you know of a rivet manufacturer in Canada? I don't. So
No, yeah. We're if you find one, you tell me, Hans.
All right. Well, both of you tend to be outspoken in your own ideas and things that you're seeing in the market. And on this conversation, we have pretty much agreement. I think the industry in general, both sides of the border, is very tariff fatigued. I mean, that goes without saying. But at this point, we're just waiting to see what comes next. So really, nobody would be surprised if something major shifted. And of course, as I said at the top of this conversation, we're all expecting this major announcement from the Supreme Court tomorrow on the U.S. side. And nobody will hold you to this, but any forecasts on what we may hear tomorrow?
Hans, you have a few more years experience than I do. I think I'm going to defer to your wisdom first. You stick
Shrewd,
your foot
Jason.
in.
Shrewd.
I don't know. I think if I was a betting man, all the stuff that I thought would happen basically hasn't. I'd be losing a lot of money right now if I would have, bet on reasonable things happening these days. If I would have bet on factual decision making, I don't know. It's just. I think it would be better if they were to be struck down. But if they were struck down, I think they're going to come back in a different version, maybe in a more specific version like what we have today. At this point, I think I'm a little bit more like, just bring it on and we'll deal with it, because otherwise you just kind of get too worked up about it and you get too angry at people, and now you got to say, you know what, detach a little bit, deal with it. It is what it is. I don't want to sound like I've given up, but in a way, I don't know.
Hans Fuller, goings then.
Well, I'll follow up the Buddha here with I think a similar take, but I look at it as, I know the Supreme Court's supposed to be independent. I think they'll be upheld for now, but even if they were struck down, I agree with Hans that they'll come back in another form. And I'll even go further to say I believe that tariffs are here to stay at some level, simply because I've never seen a government give up revenue that it's found. Once the government's taking in revenue from something, rarely do they like to give it up. So maybe they're reduced in the future, maybe they're adjusted in some form, but I think it's part of the landscape. And like Hans, I think we accept it now. We maybe don't embrace it, but I think that I was describing to another fastener person in procurement at the Vegas show, and was saying, I remember when I first came into the industry, we had the events of 9/11, and I remember the aerospace going out, and Montreal had a lot of aerospace. We lost so many jobs there, and then got back up on our feet and past that tragedy. And then I remember 2009, 2010, the housing bubble bursting in the US and the financial meltdown. And we got past that. And then there was COVID. And this person stopped me and said, the thing is today, we have to anticipate that there will always be the next challenge. And our job is to be nimble and agile, to pivot and, find solutions. And the people who can kind of accept it and pivot and remain agile will find a way to be successful. And I think that's where we are. So it's kind of a long-winded thing to say the same thing as Hans said, which is we accept it, we roll with it. It's going to be a part of the landscape and we're all in the same boat. So it's a level playing field. And, those who want to find a way forward will, and people will still need fasteners to make stuff.
All right. I think we all take comfort in that. Hans, wrapping this up, you had mentioned a few minutes ago that you felt like there was not a lot of opportunity to make your voices heard, or you really didn't feel like there was anyone paying attention if they were. Do you have any suggestions for strengthening the advocacy against these kinds of things? I mean, is that a futile thought right now, or what do you think?
I do think political pressure has value. It's just that I'm not sure how much the top level of whoever's in today, kind of listens to what are the minions are doing down here that are doing whatever. So, people I've talked to are like, in part of cabinet. And actually, I mean, I was surprised how far we could actually reach up. But they're busy doing what, one thing that Carney said was, who buys steel anyway, right? He's about to find out, I think. So I think it has value that we push and that we, create as much noise as possible. It's just it's kind of a long game, and I guess it is what it is. And Jason, I totally agree with you. It is what it is, and you just have to be able to be adaptable and go with it. But I'm gonna really make an effort and try to stay involved and hold the people accountable who are coming up with these great ideas.
We're not recording video here, but if you could have seen the look on Jason's face when you said, who buys steel? Hey, Mr. Carney, my friend Jason Baines does. How do you want to take this out, Jason?
I'll say that, I think Hans and I may not agree on everything, but on this, we're pretty in line. And we're taking up the fight. We've ridden our local, member of parliament. We're bringing it up the chain of command. What we're looking to do as a company is, and this is a great opportunity to put this out to Hans, but I think, on the Canadian side, we'll get a national organization together. I've been talking to a number of distributors, importers, manufacturers, and everyone's on the same page. And I think what this comes down to is can be distilled down to education. The people making these decisions are not educated as to the reality of what the landscape is. And these types of comments of, who buys steel? Well, I don't know. You build a home, there's rebar in your foundation, your window frames, your nails, start adding up the fasteners that go into the construction of a new home or a car, or, pick something. So I think for us, what we can do is educate them. Luckily, Hans is full of energy. And I basically started out of high school in this racket. So I've got at least another 30 years ahead of me. So I can, I think between Hans's experience, leadership, and zest for life and enthusiasm, and the fact that I've got another 30 plus years, we can probably craft something, and maybe by 2031 convince the government that yes, indeed, we use some steel.
Yeah, they do not move fast. Well, guys, okay, we said that we're not getting too many fireworks on this conversation, but it's been great nonetheless. Keep doing what you do. Jason Baines, Jay Lanfranco, Hans Fuller with Fuller Metric. We'll look forward to seeing you guys in Charlotte, come what may, at Fastener Fair this spring. I'll buy you a Fresca. Until then, we'll do a recap of the Supreme Court stuff from the U.S. with an announcement coming tomorrow, and appreciate you being here, gentlemen.
Thank you, gents.
See you all later. Sell some screws.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fasteners Clearinghouse.